Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Jade. I am your host, and this is the Parallax Podcast, a place where we discuss the unexplained, the interesting, and the just plain creepy. Tonight's episode, the Barney and Betty Hill incident. It is an alien abduction incident that happened over 50 years ago. People, 50 years, back in the day. Was it aliens? Was it not? Are they lying? Let's take a closer look. Who are Barney and Betty Hill? Because this is important to know. Betty and Barney Hill were an interracial American couple that lived in New Hampshire that claimed they were abducted by aliens on September 19th, 1961. As far as everybody knows, they were just regular people. Barney was employed by the United States Postal Service, and Betty was a social worker. But what they claim to have happened to them is truly incredible. On September 19th, 1961, at about 10:30 p.m., Betty and Barney were driving back home from a vacation in Niagara Falls and Montreal, when Betty claims to have seen a bright point of light in the sky. Betty, this daring devil that she is, tells Barney, "Hey, stop the car. Let's take a closer look at this light. We could walk the dog." What does Barney do? Winning husband of the year, he blindly follows the happy wife, happy life motto and pulls the car over and stops just south of Twin Mountain. Betty is looking through binoculars. She sees an odd-shaped craft flashing multicolored lights traveling across the face of the moon. So she's seeing this through her binoculars. I just wanted to stop and say this. In my research of this story, I read that Betty's sister claimed to have seen a UFO or a flying saucer from back in the day. And so since her sister saw one, Betty thinks that this is what she's seeing too. This fact, in combination with the readily available binoculars, just makes it a little bit sus to me, but we will move on. Now, Barney, who wasn't convinced entirely that this wasn't a plane, soon actually changes his mind after he sees the plane move in an erratic direction. The Hills said that they continued driving on this isolated road, moving very slowly through Franconia Notch in order to observe the object as it came even closer. So now this thing is getting closer to them. I don't know, but maybe I've seen too many scary movies. Maybe being raised where I was raised has taught me differently, but I am not chasing no light. I'm just saying and putting that out there. I am going in the opposite direction of the light and getting the hell off of this mountain. I'm just saying, to each their own. We will let them live their life. They continued driving on this isolated road, moving very slowly through Franconia Notch, and saw this thing coming closer. That's when about 1 mile south of Indian Head, it happened. They said that the UFO rapidly descended toward their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. I mean, you're chasing the light. What did you expect to happen, right? The huge silent craft hovered about 80 to 100 feet above the Hills' 1957 Chevy Bel Air and filled the entire field of view in his windshield. This is when Barney takes out his pistol that he often carried in his pocket and stepped away from the car and moves closer to the UFO. So now at this point, Barney, I'm sorry. I think you're asking for it because I don't know who's getting out. Anybody that I know is getting out to go chase the UFO, or are we getting in the car and driving in the other direction? You let me know, because maybe I'm crazy, because I'm going in the other direction. Bye. See you later. Not trying to meet you. Not interested. He moves and gets out of the car to get closer to the UFO. Using the readily available binoculars that Betty had, Barney looks towards the craft, claiming to see 8 to 11 humanoid figures who were peering out of the craft's windows looking at him. In unison, all but one figure moved to what appeared to be a panel on the rear wall of the hallway that encircled the front portion of the craft. The one remaining figure continued to look at Barney and communicated a message telling him to stay where you are and keep looking. Okay, so I would be fainting at this point. My anxiety would not, it would not handle this well. I'd probably just keel over, but he stood there. Barney later recollects observing the humanoid forms wearing glossy black uniforms and black caps. The silent craft approached to what Barney estimated was within 50 to 80 feet overhead and 300 feet away from him. That's very close. Now, it says that Barney freaked out and he tore the binoculars away from his eyes and ran back to the car. I feel like this is the first smart thing he's doing right now. But no judgment. In a near hysterical state, he tells Betty, "They're going to capture us." He then sees the object again shift its location, but this time it's directly above the vehicle. Barney does, for the first time in this entire story that I'm reading, something that I agree with. He gets the hell out of there. He tells Betty to watch the object, and when Betty rolls down the window and looks up, suddenly they hear rhythmic series of beeping or buzzing sounds. They said seemed to bounce off of their trunk. Their car vibrated and a tingling sensation passed through their bodies. The Hills said that then they experienced the onset of an altered state of consciousness that left their minds dulled. And then, bam, just like that, a second series of beeping or buzzing sounds returned the couple to full consciousness. When they arose, they found that they had traveled nearly 35 miles south, but had only a vague, spotty memory of this section of the road. They remembered making a sudden, sharp, unplanned turn, encountering a roadblock, and observing a fiery orb in the road. Arriving home at about dawn, the Hills assert that they had some odd sensations and impulses. Betty insisted that their luggage be kept near the back door rather in the main part of the house. Their watches never worked again. Barney said that the leather strap for the binoculars were torn, though he could not recall it tearing. The toes of his best dress shoes were scraped. Barney says that he was compelled to examine his genitals in the bathroom, though he found nothing unusual. They both took long showers to remove the possible contamination, and each drew a picture of what they had observed. It continues to say that after sleeping for a few hours, Betty awoke and placed the shoes and clothing she had worn during the drive into her closet. And that's when she notices that the dress was torn at the hem and the zipper and the lining. So her dress is torn up. There were also shiny concentric circles on their car's trunk that had not been there the day before. It's September 21st, and that's when Betty telephones Pease Air Force Base to report their UFO encounter. On September 22nd, Major Paul W. Henderson telephoned the Hills for a more detailed interview. Henderson's report, dated September 26th, determined that the Hills had probably misidentified the planet Jupiter. Within days of the encounter, Betty borrows a UFO book from the local library. It was written by a retired Marine Corps Major, Donald E. Kehoe, the head of NICAP, which is a civilian UFO research group. On September 26, Betty wrote to Kehoe. She tells Kehoe the full story. She also writes to him that she and Barney were considering hypnosis to help recall what happened. So she's trying to figure it out. She is on a mission and she is convinced that she has seen the aliens and she was abducted. On October 21st, 1961, in a 6-hour interview, the Hills related all they could remember of the UFO encounter. 10 days after the alleged UFO encounter, Betty began having a series of vivid dreams. In the dreams, Betty and Barney and the men walked up a ramp into a disc-shaped craft of metallic appearance. On the inside, Barney and Betty were separated. She said that she protested, but was told by a man that she called the leader that if she and Barney were examined together, it would take much longer to conduct the exams. She and Barney were taken to separate rooms. The examiner told Betty that he would conduct a few tests to note the differences between humans and the craft's occupants. The man cut off a lock of Betty's hair. He examined her eyes, ears, mouth, teeth, throat, and hands. He then tested her nervous system, and he thrust the needle into her navel, which caused Betty agonizing pain. When she's in this agonizing pain because they've stuck the needle through her belly button, she says that the leader waved his hand in front of her eyes and the pain vanished. The examiner then left the room and Betty engaged in a conversation with the leader. She picked up a book with rows of strange symbols that the leader said she could take home with her. She also asked from where he came, and he pulled down an instructional map dotted with stars. The leader then informed Betty that she couldn't keep the book, stating that they had decided that the other men did not want her to even remember the encounter. Betty insisted that no matter what they did to her memory, she would one day recall the events. On November 25th, 1961, the Hills were again interviewed at length by NICAP members, this time C.D. Jackson and Robert E. Homan. The hypnotizing of the Hills began on January 4th, 1964, so this is all happening under hypnosis. Barney related that he and Betty were taken onto the disc-shaped craft, where they were separated. He was escorted to a room by 3 of the men and told to lie down on a small rectangular examine table. This next part, guys, I'm warning you. It's a little, racy. So I'm going to try to keep it YouTube. A cup-like device was placed over his, and he said that he didn't experience though he thought that had been taken. The men scraped his skin and peered in his ears and mouth, felt his spine, and seemed to be counting his vertebrae. Betty, on the other hand, reported a conversation with the leader in English. Barney said that he heard them speaking, but in a mumbling language that he did not understand. Both Betty and Barney stated that they hadn't observed the beings' mouths move when they communicated in English with them. Under hypnosis, Betty's account was similar to the 5 dreams about the UFO abduction that she had way back, like 10 days after they were abducted, with a few notable differences. It says mainly pertaining to her capture and release. Barney and Betty's memories in their hypnotic regression did coincide with one another. The hypnosis is done. They've told their story. They've gone under hypnosis. They've spoken to the psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist comes back and says, Barney's recollection of the UFO encounter was possibly a fantasy inspired by Betty's dreams. It was the more reasonable and consistent explanations. What are they going to do with an alien abduction story in 1961? It says, Barney rejected this idea, noting that while their memories were consistent in some regards, there were also portions of both of their narratives that were unique to each other. What happens after the psychiatrist examines them? They go under hypnosis and they tell their story. And the psychiatrist comes back and tells them, you guys are crazy. She's having dreams and you're having a fantasy about her dreams. What do you do? Honestly, I would probably be really upset, but in the same token, I know my truth. I would probably stand proud. I was abducted by aliens. What do? Barney and Betty Hill just go back to their regular lives. They are willing to discuss the alleged UFO encounter with their friends, with family, the occasional UFO researcher, but the Hills apparently made no effort to seek publicity. Psychiatrists later suggest that the supposed abduction was a hallucination brought on by stress of being an interracial couple in the early 1960s in the United States. With all of that being said, and their story ending the way that it did. Do you believe that it was aliens? Or do you believe that they made it up? That's my question that I'm going to leave you. This is it, guys. This is one of the most famous alien abduction stories that happened over 50 years ago, September 19th, 1961. What do you think? Leave me your comments down below. And until next time, bye.